they saw Trump as an existential threat to this post-war liberal order, and they needed to. They viewed social media as the means to his power, which I think was exaggerated. So on the one hand, they saw a threat. I think they also saw an opportunity. The war on terror, we won. I mean, huge victory. I mean, it's shocking how successful it was in some ways. So you have a bunch of people that suddenly need something to do. So there's a lot of motivations there. And then you also have the guys that lost the Hillary campaign. John Podesta, he was her chair of her campaign. He runs the most powerful, progressive, frankly, propaganda organization in the world, or at least in the United States, the Center for American Progress. They were looking also for some reason, someone to blame for their own failures, for the dislikability of Hillary. And so there was just a lot of motivations to try to get control over social media platforms. They felt like they had lost control of them.
And what was the attitude of these social media platforms when they were exchanging emails back and forth with these intelligence agencies? Was there any understanding of the implications of allowing this web of influence to infiltrate and control narratives, and how kind of creepy and dangerous that is? Did they understand how other people would perceive that? Because I would assume this is all the emails were exchanged, and there was Slack messages, and all this stuff is recorded, right? So there's a record of it.
Yeah.
Did they have an understanding of how other people would view this?
Yeah, I mean, just to back up even further, so there's two interesting dynamics going on. The first is that the internet itself is created by the U.S. Department of Defense, and Google is a spinoff of Defense Department projects. So on the one hand, the internet is a function of the U.S. military. I mean, it's a spinoff of the U.S. military. It's a great one. We're glad to have it. But I think the U.S. military and the deep state and whatever, they felt like they had control over the internet until Trump, basically, or really maybe until ISIS around 2014, 2015. That's the first dynamic. The second dynamic is culturally, Silicon Valley is libertarian, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the Electronic Frontier Foundation. You have a libertarian ethos. Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, is very much a manifestation of that libertarian ethos. Mark Zuckerberg less. But even Mark Zuckerberg, after the 2016 elections, when everyone's accusing him of throwing the election to Trump, he's like, this is ridiculous. He's like, our own data doesn't support. There just wasn't enough. The Russians clearly did not have this influence. They just beat the crap out of him so much and threatened to take away their ability to operate, which is known as Section 230, which is this huge liability protection in the law that passed in 1996, which allows Google, Facebook, Twitter to exist.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
When you say they threatened to take it, like, in what way?
Directly. I mean, including Biden himself. I mean, but basically Democratic politicians, they would just say, we're going to remove your Section 230 status. That's just like saying we're going to destroy your company. I mean, it's not.
And they were saying this because their assertion was that Russian disinformation and propaganda led to Donald Trump being elected.
Yes.
Being elected. And there was no evidence of this.
No, I mean, there was some evidence of it, but nothing.
Well, there was certainly evidence of, like, these troll farms.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, we know they exist.
Yes. Yeah, but it's trivial.
Yeah.
I mean, they would exaggerate. They would say things like, 146 million Americans had Russian propaganda in their news feeds. That's not the same as saying 146 million people saw the ads.
Right.
Because it's like your feed is, remember, that was social.
Of course.
Facebook has changed. So, yeah, I mean, there's three big disinformation campaigns that were run by, frankly, the U.S. government and their allies. The first was the Russia hoax, the idea that Russians controlled Donald Trump and won him the election. The second was the Hunter Biden laptop, and the third is that COVID the idea that it's a conspiracy theory to even imagine that COVID could have emerged from a lab. There's others, including. We can talk about there was this effort to basically smear a bunch of ordinary conservative or Trump supporting Twitter users as Russian bots.
Yeah.
But basically, you have active disinformation campaigns being run by the U.S. government and U.S. government contractors against the American people on these issues at the same time that they're demanding censorship. So you have propaganda on the one hand and censorship on the other.
Well,